Envy is a declaration of inferiority. Napoleon Bonaparte.
Envy is the emotion people deny most aggressively, not because it is rare, but because admitting it damages self-image immediately. Unlike anger, fear, or hatred, envy implies comparison, and comparison implies inferiority. For this reason, envy almost never appears in its pure form. It disguises itself. Robert Greene treats envy as one of the most socially destructive forces, precisely because it is unconscious, indirect, and morally camouflaged. People rarely experience envy as envy. They experience it as irritation, suspicion, moral concern, disappointment, or honest criticism. The feeling feels justified because its true source remains hidden. The foundation of this law is simple and uncomfortable. People do not resent others for being evil or powerful. They resent them for being similar and slightly ahead. Envy requires proximity. It does not arise toward distant figures or abstract success. It arises among peers, friends, siblings, colleagues, classmates, people who share comparable backgrounds, abilities, or aspirations. When someone close succeeds, it threatens the unspoken belief in one's own specialness. The ego experiences this as injury. Greene emphasizes that envy is not triggered by failure, but by comparison without consolation. If someone far above you succeeds, the gap can be rationalized. If someone very different succeeds, the comparison dissolves. But when someone like you advances, the mind loses its protective explanations. The success feels personal. This produces a dangerous psychological tension. The envier cannot openly attack the source of discomfort without appearing petty or small, nor can they acknowledge the feeling internally without damaging self-respect. So the emotion must find an indirect outlet. It transforms. The first transformation is devaluation. The envied person's success is minimized, explained away, or reframed as luck, favoritism, or moral compromise. The goal is not accuracy, but emotional relief. If the achievement can be dismissed, the ego can recover. When devaluation fails, envy escalates into moralization. The envier begins to judge the successful person's character, motives, or methods. What was once admiration cools into scrutiny. Greene notes that this phase often masquerades as concern or honesty. The envier believes they are being principled, not hostile. The third transformation is covert sabotage. Direct confrontation is too revealing. Instead, envy operates through subtle undermining. Withheld support, quiet discouragement, strategic absence, faint praise, or spreading doubt. These actions feel harmless in isolation, but cumulative in effect. The envier rarely experiences themselves as malicious. They feel reactive. Greene's key insight is that envy prefers invisibility. Unlike hatred, which confronts, envy corrodes. It erodes relationships quietly. It poisons alliances without announcing itself. This is why people are often blindsided by betrayal from those they believed were closest or most supportive. The hostility did not appear suddenly. It was never expressed openly. Another crucial aspect of envy is its inversion of blame. Because the envier cannot accept responsibility for the feeling, the discomfort is attributed to the other person's behavior. The successful individual is seen as arrogant, insensitive, or threatening, even when they have done nothing differently. Their mere existence becomes provocative. This explains why success often produces isolation. People withdraw not because they are harmed, but because they are reminded of what they lack. Greene warns that denying envy does not neutralize it. It sharpens it. The more people insist they feel only goodwill, the more aggressively envy acts beneath the surface. Like repression, denial removes oversight. This law is not about cynicism, it is about perception. Until envy is understood as a structural feature of human psychology, people misinterpret the behavior of others and their own reactions. They assume hostility comes from disagreement, misunderstanding, or bad character, when it often comes from unacknowledged comparison. Law 10 begins with this recognition. Success changes how people see you, long before it changes what you do. And those changes are rarely spoken aloud. Envy follows a specific internal logic. It is not a spontaneous reaction to success. It is the result of a threatened self-image combined with proximity. Greene's analysis shows that envy emerges when the ego can no longer protect itself through distance, difference, or hierarchy. The process begins with unconscious comparison. Human beings continuously measure themselves against others, but most comparisons remain harmless because they are buffered by explanations. Differences in background, ability, or circumstance allow the ego to maintain equilibrium. Envy appears when those buffers disappear. The other person is similar enough that their success feels attainable and therefore indicting. This produces ego injury. The injury is subtle but destabilizing. It suggests that one's own progress has stalled, that effort has been insufficient, or that talent is lacking. Because this implication is intolerable, the mind seeks immediate relief. Envy provides that relief indirectly. The first mechanism is denial of feeling. Admitting envy would require acknowledging inferiority, so the emotion is rejected from conscious awareness. The individual experiences discomfort without knowing why. Irritation appears without clear cause. The feeling demands expression, but the mind refuses to name it. This leads to reinterpretation. The source of discomfort is reassigned. The envied person becomes the problem. Their behavior is re-examined, often retroactively. Innocuous actions are reframed as arrogance. Neutral statements are heard as condescension. Greene notes that this shift often happens silently and feels rational. The envier believes they are responding to new information, not internal comparison. The next mechanism is devaluation. The achievement is minimized or explained away. Luck, favoritism, timing, or unethical behavior are invoked, not necessarily spoken aloud, but held internally. Devaluation restores temporary balance. If the success is illegitimate, the ego is spared. When devaluation is insufficient, envy escalates into moral judgment. The envied person's character becomes the focus. Greene emphasizes that morality is the most effective disguise envy can wear. By framing hostility as ethical concern, the envier can attack without appearing small. The criticism feels elevated. It is no longer about success. It is about values. This stage is particularly dangerous because it feels righteous. The envier experiences satisfaction, not shame. The final mechanism is covert aggression. Direct hostility would expose the feeling, so action becomes indirect. Support is withdrawn quietly. Praise becomes conditional. Opportunities are blocked subtly. Doubt is planted through suggestion rather than accusation. These behaviors rarely trigger confrontation because each act appears minor in isolation. Greene points out that envy prefers ambiguity. It thrives where motives are unclear and accountability is diffuse. This is why envy flourishes in collaborative environments, social circles, and institutions that rely on trust. The damage accumulates invisibly. Another critical feature of envy is its self-reinforcing nature. As the envied person continues to succeed, the injury deepens. The envier becomes more sensitive, more reactive, more invested in the other's failure. Any setback is experienced as relief. Any further success feels provocative. The relationship shifts from neutral to adversarial, without a single explicit conflict. Importantly, envy does not require malice to operate. Many envious individuals sincerely believe they are acting in good faith. The feeling remains hidden even from themselves. This is why Greene insists that envy is most dangerous when it is denied. The mechanical insight of this law is precise. Envy converts comparison into hostility when the ego lacks resilience. It is not success itself that provokes harm, but unacknowledged comparison combined with proximity and denial. Once these conditions are met, behavior follows predictable paths: devaluation, moralization, and sabotage. Understanding these mechanics does not eliminate envy, but it makes it legible, and what is legible can be anticipated. One of the most instructive historical examples of envy operating invisibly, but decisively, is the downfall of Nicolas Fouquet, Superintendent of Finances under Louis XIV. Fouquet was not a rival in position. He was a servant. His role was administrative, not sovereign. And yet his fate demonstrates Greene's central argument. Envy is triggered not by opposition, but by proximity combined with visibility. Fouquet was brilliant, efficient, and immensely successful. He restored order to France's finances and accumulated extraordinary wealth in the process. Crucially, he did not hide his success. He displayed it, most famously through the construction of the opulent estate Vaux-le-Vicomte and the lavish celebration held there in 1661. This was the critical mistake. Louis XIV was young, newly asserting authority, and intensely sensitive to status. Fouquet's splendor did not threaten him politically, but it injured him psychologically. Fouquet appeared not as a subordinate, but as a peer, or worse, a superior in taste, influence, and magnificence. This is the precise condition in which envy activates. Louis could not openly resent his own minister for success without undermining royal dignity, nor could he acknowledge internal comparison. Instead, the emotion transformed. Admiration cooled into scrutiny. Scrutiny became suspicion. Suspicion became moral judgment. Fouquet's wealth, once tolerated, was reinterpreted as corruption. His confidence became arrogance. His competence became threat. None of these accusations were new. They were reinterpretations driven by injured ego rather than new evidence. Greene emphasizes that this is how envy operates at the highest levels of power, not through rage, but through rationalization. Louis did not confront Fouquet emotionally. He gathered information. He consulted advisors. He allowed the narrative of impropriety to solidify. Each step appeared reasonable. Each step masked a deeper psychological motive. The arrest of Fouquet was sudden and devastating. He was charged with embezzlement, tried, and sentenced to life imprisonment. His fortune was seized. His allies abandoned him. The fall appeared justified by law, but the timing reveals the truth. It followed not mismanagement, but humiliation of proximity. What made Fouquet intolerable was not corruption, but comparison. Greene uses this case to expose a critical blindness in how people interpret power struggles. They assume conflicts arise from ideological disagreement or competition for position. In reality, envy often precedes these rationalizations. Once envy is activated, the mind searches for justification. Another revealing detail is that Louis absorbed everything Fouquet represented. The artists, architects, and administrators who built Vaux-le-Vicomte were reassigned to Versailles. The success that provoked envy was not destroyed, it was appropriated. This underscores Greene's point. Envy seeks erasure or absorption, not coexistence. Fouquet failed to recognize the danger because he misunderstood the emotion. He believed loyalty and service insulated him. He did not grasp that visibility and excellence near a fragile ego provoke hostility regardless of intention. The lesson is structural, not moral. Fouquet did nothing overtly wrong. He was not disloyal. He was not incompetent. His error was psychological miscalculation. He underestimated the effect his success would have on someone close enough to compare themselves. This is why envy is so dangerous. It does not announce itself. It does not require conflict. It operates beneath politeness, beneath praise, beneath apparent alliance. By the time it becomes visible, the outcome is already decided. The deeper danger of envy is not that it exists, but that it is misread. People expect hostility to announce itself. They look for confrontation, insults, or open rivalry. Envy rarely appears in these forms. It prefers proximity, politeness, and ambiguity. This is why it is so effective. Greene's synthesis shows that envy thrives where relationships depend on shared identity. Friendship, collaboration, mentorship, and family create emotional closeness, but they also create constant comparison. The closer and more equal two people appear, the more threatening deviation becomes. When one advances, the other must adjust their self-concept or experience injury. Most people choose injury. This injury is rarely conscious. The envier does not think, "I resent your success." Instead, they experience discomfort without a clear source. The mind resolves this discomfort by reinterpreting the other person's behavior. What was once admirable becomes irritating. What was once neutral becomes provocative. This shift feels justified because it is experienced as perception, not emotion. Greene emphasizes that envy often disguises itself as disappointment. "I expected more from you. You've changed. This doesn't feel right anymore." These statements sound relational, even caring, but they function as emotional pressure. The envied person is subtly punished for deviation. The underlying demand is implicit. Return to a level that no longer threatens me. Another disguise envy wears is concern. Advice becomes intrusive. Warnings multiply. Risk is exaggerated. The envier frames themselves as protective, but the effect is restrictive. Greene notes that this behavior often appears benevolent on the surface while quietly limiting the other's movement. Envy also restructures group dynamics. In organizations, it spreads through informal communication. Praise becomes selective. Credit is redirected. Small doubts are repeated until they feel substantial. No single act is decisive, but the accumulation changes perception. The envied individual becomes isolated without understanding why. This is how envy avoids accountability. Each action can be explained away. No one feels responsible for the outcome. A crucial insight Greene highlights is that envy is reactive to visibility. People do not envy what they cannot see. Success that is hidden, abstract, or distant provokes little response. Success that is visible, concrete, and embodied in someone similar provokes intense reaction. This is why sudden recognition, promotion, or transformation often destabilizes relationships that seemed secure. The envier experiences this as betrayal, even though no promise was broken. The betrayal is psychological. The other person has violated an unspoken agreement to remain comparable. Greene also notes a critical asymmetry. Envy rarely flows upward peacefully. Those with fragile egos envy more intensely than those with secure identities. Power does not eliminate envy. It amplifies it when identity is weak. This is why leaders often react most harshly to subordinates who shine too brightly. Authority does not protect against comparison. It sharpens it. The synthesis of this law is not cynical. It is diagnostic. Envy explains why relationships sour without explanation, why support turns conditional, and why success so often comes with unexpected resistance. It also explains why direct confrontation rarely resolves the problem. The envier does not experience themselves as hostile. They experience themselves as reasonable. This is what makes envy so corrosive. It is not fueled by hatred, but by injured self-regard combined with denial. Greene's warning is precise. If you do not account for envy, you will misinterpret human behavior at every level. You will assume disagreement where there is comparison. You will assume misunderstanding where there is ego injury. And you will be blindsided by actions that feel unjustified because their true motive was never acknowledged. This law forces a recalibration of how success is navigated, not to hide achievement, but to understand its social consequences, not to distrust everyone, but to recognize where proximity and similarity create vulnerability. Envy does not require enemies, it requires mirrors. And mirrors, Greene reminds us, are the hardest things for people to face. Greene's countermeasures against envy are not about eliminating the emotion, an impossible task, but about anticipating it, redirecting it, and limiting its ability to cause damage. The goal is not harmony, it is survival within social reality. The first countermeasure is recognizing envy early, before it hardens. Envy announces itself through subtle changes, not confrontation. Praise becomes cooler, support becomes conditional, advice becomes frequent and restrictive, humor acquires an edge. Greene stresses that these signals must be read behaviorally, not emotionally. Do not argue with them. Do not demand honesty. The envier is rarely conscious of their own motive and will deny it convincingly. The second countermeasure is strategic humility. This does not mean self-effacement or false modesty. It means controlling visibility. Success displayed too vividly among peers invites comparison. Greene advises letting others announce your achievements when possible and allowing credit to diffuse. Visibility can be delayed without being denied. This reduces immediate ego injury while preserving long-term position. The third countermeasure is avoid confiding vulnerabilities to potential enviers. Envy thrives on asymmetry. When someone both envies you and knows your weaknesses, the temptation to undermine increases. Greene warns against confusing familiarity with safety. The closer the relationship, the more dangerous unguarded disclosure can become once comparison enters the equation. The fourth countermeasure is do not moralize in return. When envy turns into criticism or obstruction, the instinct is to defend oneself ethically or emotionally. This is a mistake. Moral confrontation escalates the conflict and forces the envier to justify themselves further. Greene advises responding with calm neutrality. Let behavior reveal motive. Do not supply emotional fuel. The fifth countermeasure is distance without rupture. Cutting people off dramatically validates their internal narrative. Staying close invites continued corrosion. The strategic move is gradual disengagement. Less exposure, fewer shared projects, reduced emotional availability. This protects position without creating an enemy. The sixth countermeasure is channel envy upward when possible. Greene notes that envy directed at those far above you is less destructive because comparison is buffered by scale. Similarly, when you rise, align yourself with individuals whose status is secure enough not to feel threatened. Fragile egos are the danger zone, not competitors with nothing to prove. The seventh countermeasure is avoid unnecessary comparison triggers. Public displays of superiority, taste, access, influence, provoke envy more than achievement itself. Greene emphasizes that power is safest when it appears understated. Let results speak quietly. Flaunting invites resentment without benefit. The eighth countermeasure is do not attempt to cure envy. Appeasement fails. Reassurance fails. Equality gestures fail. Envy is not resolved through generosity, because generosity reinforces the asymmetry that caused the injury. Greene is explicit. Attempting to soothe envy often intensifies it. The envier feels patronized. The ninth countermeasure is use envy as information. When you notice resistance emerging without cause, assume comparison has been triggered. This allows you to adjust strategy without confusion. Envy reveals where your growth has outpaced the emotional capacity of those around you. The final countermeasure is emotional restraint, not emotional withdrawal. Greene does not advise suspicion toward everyone. He advises disciplined perception, observe reactions, track changes, trust patterns, not declarations. Envy is consistent over time, even when it hides behind politeness. The core strategic lesson of this law is simple. Success changes relationships before it changes circumstances. Those who fail to account for envy interpret resistance as misunderstanding or bad luck. Those who understand it adjust visibility, alliances, and expectations accordingly. Envy cannot be eradicated, but it can be managed. Ignored, it corrodes quietly. Anticipated, it loses its leverage. Envy persists because it hides behind normal social behavior. It does not announce itself as hostility. It appears as concern, restraint, disappointment, humor, or moral critique. This camouflage is what allows it to operate effectively while remaining unchallenged, even by the person experiencing it. Greene's final synthesis makes a crucial distinction. Envy is not a moral failing, so much as a psychological reaction to threatened self-regard. It arises when comparison becomes unavoidable and the ego lacks sufficient resilience to absorb it. The danger is not the feeling itself, but the refusal to recognize it. When envy remains unconscious, it reshapes behavior without consent. People begin to reinterpret reality in ways that protect their self-image. Admiration turns into irritation. Support turns conditional. Distance feels justified. Each step appears reasonable in isolation, but together they form a pattern of quiet opposition. This is why envy is rarely experienced as wrongdoing. The envier feels correct. Their discomfort is attributed to the other person's behavior, not their own internal comparison. Greene emphasizes that this misattribution is what allows envy to corrode relationships without open conflict. There is no moment to confront, no argument to resolve. Envy also explains why success often produces unexpected isolation. It changes the emotional equilibrium of relationships long before it changes roles or power. People who once felt equal now feel displaced. The loss is psychological, not material, but it is experienced as real. Greene's warning is not to distrust everyone, nor to conceal achievement indefinitely. It is to understand the social cost of visibility. Success makes people mirrors to one another. Those who benefit from reflection will remain supportive. Those who are wounded by it will withdraw or undermine. The failure most people make is interpreting this shift as personal betrayal or misunderstanding. They search for explanations in character or circumstance when the cause is structural. Comparison has been activated. The response follows predictably. This law also applies inward. People deny their own envy just as readily as they deny it in others. When this happens, envy turns inward as resentment, self-sabotage, or moral superiority. The same mechanisms apply. What is not acknowledged does not disappear. It redirects. Greene's final distinction is precise. Envy becomes dangerous only when it is denied. Acknowledged envy can be restrained. Anticipated envy can be managed. Denied envy must act indirectly. This is why moral posturing and covert sabotage are its preferred expressions. They preserve self-image while discharging hostility. The purpose of this law is not to harden you against people, but to sharpen perception. When behavior no longer surprises you, it loses its power to confuse. When motives are legible, strategy replaces reaction. Envy will exist wherever human beings compare themselves. This is unavoidable. What is avoidable is blindness. Those who fail to recognize envy attribute resistance to fate, misunderstanding, or malice. Those who recognize it adjust expectations, alliances, and exposure without resentment. They do not demand fairness from human nature. They design around it. This closes the law, not with suspicion, but with accuracy. And accuracy, Greene reminds us, is the foundation of power.